Hi everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for making time for our. I think this is the second AI Hive event of the year and ever. Welcome to Pioneer AI London Enterprise AI Vibes. This event has been made possible thanks to our sponsor Fyxer AI. Thanks to our host London AI Hub. And you know what? Without further ado, we have very interesting conversations with our speakers up ahead, and I hope you also had your drinks and conversations with the people that you're meeting there. Without further ado, I'd just like Rupert from London AI Hub to talk about this wonderful place in the middle of London. Right? All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. My name's Rupert, lovely to meet you all, and an absolute delight to welcome you to the London AI Hub. What the London AI Hub is, it's intended as a home for London's AI ecosystem. With London being a large sprawling city, AI being sector agnostic, the community here has just quite naturally devolved into hotspots and pockets. Progressively, they just don't interact as they should, they isolate themselves, and unfortunately, the situation is then that great connections between market leaders, rising stars, and key stakeholders are not made. Through giving the ecosystem then a permanent home, we look to support all stakeholders through three pillars. The first of which is AI native teams, who we house as our residents here, and these are teams of all sizes, from 2 up to 25, with 14 moving in since the start of March. We look to drive organic footfall to their doors through our events. We make targeted connections for them if they're looking for funding or for corporate clients. We'll get them demoing. We're also supported through our partners, AWS and Google Cloud. Second to this then is just creating that singular nexus of all stakeholders through our online community. So our website, www.londonaihub.co.uk, where we share our upcoming events and how to get involved, as well as our newsletter, which one can subscribe to via the website. LinkedIn is also where we share a lot of the insights and things that are going on in the hub. Further to that then, with this being a physical space, we want to activate the physical peer-to-peer network, which we do through events. We host larger events like this probably every week or every 10 days, just to make sure that everyone's coming along. If you would like to hear more, please visit the website or come and see me afterwards. Thank you very much.
All right, that's really cool. We've got a space for startups, AI, meeting people who are like smart people. So, well, actually, I've not introduced myself as well. So I'm Tim Santos. I'm currently director of product for Graphcore. We build chips, and I started the community AI Hive for basically just having a reason to meet cool folks building in this space. And yeah, if you want to run events and speak in the future, approach us as well. We've got like really good partners, venues, and all that. And yeah, I think our next section part of the program is actually we have very brilliant the CTO of Fyxer AI. So they are an AI-powered personal email assistant, an AI chief of staff. They built right into your inbox, going where the users are, having a seamless access and all that, helps you save time and close more deals by handling administrative tasks like inbox management, email drafting, and meeting summaries, meeting scheduling, and they're AI native, AI first, and they've gone from 0 to 10 million ARR within a year of launching, which is like super impressive, like rocket to the moon, literally. and recently have closed their 10 million funding in their recent Series A. Without further ado, Matt French, CTO of Fyxer. Let's welcome him. Round of applause. Cool. Yeah, I mean, Matt. So you're flying Fyxer AI. I think you would do a better.
It's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, I think you will do a better job at explaining. Like I had my blurb, a quick blurb on what Fyxer AI. Like, do you want to talk about like Fyxer from your own
So
words?
the story actually starts 8 years ago. So my other two co-founders had an executive assistant agency, so actual human executive assistants. And they ran that for 8 years. And what that taught them was this problem around what I would call, like what we call relationship builders, but basically people that work in professional services, in client-facing roles. All they really want to do is like meet with clients. Like that's what actually makes them happy. It makes their employer happy because that's what makes the company money, and that's what they're best at. And actually, like a lot of the most senior people like that will have an executive assistant for the reason that if you don't have one, you spend most of your time like doing admin rather than actually like doing the thing that they enjoy, they're good at, that makes the company money. And so like the way we visualize that is there's a loop around meetings where the valuable thing is a meeting, but before that you have to schedule it, you have to prepare for it properly, and afterwards you have to take notes, you have to send the notes out to everyone so everyone knows the next steps, and you have to like basically sometimes follow up with people when they're not replying. And so there's this massive problem around like what the person wants to do versus like all the admin that they have to do. And the executive assistant agency solved that problem manually. And because we were lucky enough to have like kind of time tracking data from the executive assistants, when we started Fyxer AI, like we knew exactly what to build to solve this problem for that kind of customer. Like we could just literally see how long they were spending doing each thing, like how long the executive assistants were spending, you know, helping them with their inbox management or helping them with the draft replies or helping them with scheduling. And so it made it completely clear, right, we've got this problem around, you know, people spending a lot of time with admin. And to be clear, like this is a great like customer segment. Like a lot of tech kind of sells to other tech companies. And the big thing that we've kind of, I think, done differently is sold to like the other 90% who are like not tech, but are most of the economy, and basically solve that problem for them. So that's basically the founding story. Is it was driven by the executive assistant agency, like that told us, that gave us the map of what to build, and it told us like what customer AI could really solve the admin problem for.
It's very interesting. So did it start when you started building MVPs and all of that? Has it always been this idea, or did you have to pivot a little bit, or you know how was it?
So yeah, the pivot having spent a lot of time building products, I know the pain of pivoting initially and, you know, finding that product market fit. I think we were really fortunate to have that executive assistant agency, basically, because it meant that we had the map, but meant that we didn't have to do that.
Right.
From the time tracking data, and also honestly, like we could like basically the executive assistants we recorded their work day, and that actually told us exactly how to build stuff as well. Like what stuff did they consider when they were scheduling meetings? They left time between meetings when you were like in person, say, or they knew exactly how long a coffee catch up was compared to a board meeting. And we could literally just build a lot of these things into our system. So that's like, to answer your question, like we didn't have to pivot, and that was the reason why.
It seems like there was a very clear, you know, target, right? Like the ROI, like a lot of the enterprise company AI vendors will say like, oh, how do we track ROI? But here, you know, the cost, which is
the time.
Yeah.
It's a really good question, because like I think we're not done with that yet, because one thing that we can track ROI well in is time. Actually, if you look at a lot of the big customers we have, like one big customer is EXP, which is a US real estate agency. And like for them, more meetings equals more money. Like the more meetings they do, the more money they make. And actually, a thing they're looking at, as well as like saving time, is also how well they do it at winning the deals. Actually, AI can help with that. Like it can actually make them more effective. It can remind them to do things. It can like write really well, remember, like have a superhuman memory. Yeah. And so like that's a really big opportunity we're working on as well. Like in addition to the time tracking, time saving. Sorry. Yeah. No, that's very interesting because I just remembered one of the taglines is this already saves you X hours. Yeah. You know, but then there's more to it as you go to like, you know, different customers, different clients. For sure, yeah. That's really cool. And you know what? So you've grown really, you know, fast, like 50,000 users right now. What are like inflection points in scale that you realize that okay, what we were doing before is a different scale. Like you're seeing new types of problems. What were those like inflection points in scale? I think the biggest one I can remember was actually, it was when our first product engineer joined actually. So that would have been like May or June 2024. So we were still 4 people then. And the big thing we just released was the draft replies, just because we started with just one product, which was the inbox categorization. So sorting emails into ones you need to reply to, ones you need to read, ones that like can be ignored. And the big thing with drafts when we released it was like everyone didn't like it. And the reason they didn't like it was because it wasn't in their voice. And what that meant was that like everyone that you're sending the draft to then knows you used AI to write it. And like the big thing that we found out quite early was that like a good rubric of when people are happy to reveal that they've used AI to do something is, would you be happy an executive assistant doing it? Like you'd be happy with them scheduling a meeting for you, but it's a bit more awkward to like have your EA like write all your email replies for everyone, that even like important clients. And so the tone of the emails was really important. And like the big inflection point came when we made a fine-tuned model that like really accurately replicated people's tone and then like enabled the draft to be like exactly in their voice. And that was like really important to people. Very interesting because so I talked to some like early stage startups and they would be like, oh, context engineering is enough. Like how did that decision point, there's still a debate now that they're saying like, oh, context engineering versus fine tuning. Like, how was that decision made from your? That's a really good point. Yeah. I think like everyone else, because we're all figuring it out kind of as we go. It's so new. Like we went through, I think the cycle of things. There's been a cycle of things that people have found important or said that are important. It all started with like prompt engineering. That's the thing to focus on, and then it was people were talking about fine tuning, and they were talking about RAG, and now they're talking about context engineering. And like, the truth is honestly like all of them are important to some extent, and there's basically like a hierarchy of how much effort you need to put in to get them to pay off for you. So I'd say prompt engineering is where you should always get started. I think for me, like on the other side of the investment scale, like we invested a lot in it, but fine tuning is very hard to get right just because you need to scale up how many examples you can show to the AI. And then somewhere in the middle is the context engineering and the like RAG and retrieval stuff. I'd say like honestly we use all of them. All of them are important, and they all interact together. But you could have a retrieval system that has some fine-tuning steps and has like a really good prompt, like underlying the steps that aren't fine-tuned, for instance. So for someone that's building an MVP, okay, is that your hierarchy of kind of prompt engineering first, then? But yeah, for MVP, like it would honestly be starting with some kind of way of validating but the way you're using the models is working. Like that's where you always basically have to start. Like at the start, that often is just vibe checks. So you kind of start with like prompt engineering plus vibe checking, like is what you're doing working? You might move on to like evals. So actually, can you make something that checks the work of another AI? And often that is actually quite scalable. And you get confidence in that. Or you might move on to like making a validation set. So literally like here's 100 or 200 representative samples, and I'm gonna like run my prompt against that, and I'm gonna see like if the loss like goes down basically.
So you're using an LLM as a judge that runs and checks whether the outputs are right?
It depends on the use case. Like sometimes that's good, but sometimes you can actually, like all the LLM as a judge is doing is just doing what a loss function in traditional data science is doing. It's just like saying how far away is my model output from my ideal output. And there's like, for some use cases, the best you're going to do is the LLM as a judge. And like for other cases where depending on the output, it might be more structured, you can use like a better, or not better, but like a more precise loss function.
Yeah, very interesting. And you know, one of the things that we were talking about earlier, right? Like, is that the interface is the email interface, but you know, what's happening underneath? Like, what is it that we don't see? Because it's easy to get fooled by, oh, this is simple, but then you know, at the scale of your operations, like what is it that we don't see under the hood in terms of like sophistication?
So
that you can share, of course.
Yeah, I can't say too much. I'll say that it's a mixture of learning about you, so learning about you, your company, your workflows, and access to the wider world, and like the ability to go off and like find stuff about the wider world. And thirdly, like understanding the specific task that maybe the email is giving you.
Yeah, and when you fine tune, like, is this are they personalized like models for each person? Are we talking about that or something else?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point as well.
Yeah.
Like annoyingly, the annoying answer like it depends.
Yeah.
So it depends on like the use case and how objective it is. Because for instance, maybe you're making a model that's saying, let's look at some free text and let's see like what times it's mentioning. So it might be saying, oh, Wednesday or Thursday lunchtime or something. You're translating that into like an actual date you can use in code. That as an example of like something that's very objective, but there's no subjectivity to that. And so with your fine tuning, you need just one model. You don't need to customize it at all. And like there, you can just use fine tuning to ensure the accuracy you need to. Whereas like if it's subjective, then you might be using like more user input. So basically, the more subjective it is, the more you want to like sway towards user input rather than like being prescriptive and saying like this is what it should output.
Have you had like moments where because of how fast things are being released and evolving right there, have you had moments where like, something caught you off guard that, oh, this is something new, either stuff that we're working on has already been super
all the time.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? How do you decide what to?
It's a really good question, right? Because it can be quite overwhelming, right? There's loads of like different models coming out.
Yeah.
There's loads of new techniques that are being mentioned. Just like knowing which ones are the ones that bear fruit. I'd say like one thing that's really helped us just like gain confidence in everything is just having a really good like testing framework. So a lot of the changes that we're making are non-deterministic, right? You can't know for sure that like without having either a good validation set or like A/B testing them all the time, basically. And so when you have a really good setup for that, those things are an opportunity rather than catching off guard, because you can be the first to like deploy the new model and see if it's actually like very good for your use case.
Yeah.
And swap out a model quickly. Or I guess, techniques that you're using are harder to do, but I think staying abreast of the main themes, and especially like the news from the big providers, is really important. But like not getting lost in the noise as well, and like not everything that comes out will be applicable to your use case. So like just staying really close to your use case and customers is important as well.
And it's very interesting because being able to measure, well, one, like observability of your outputs, being able to measure them and repeat like evals and tests so that you can try the other thing and quickly.
For sure,
okay. Yeah. Cool. I have one interesting question because I saw that you had things like SOC 2 compliance and things like that. I've heard debates in some, depending on like CISOs debating like we should do this, we should get this ISO certification, but no, we're already doing that. We don't need a piece of paper or something like that. Like what was the decision point that made you kind of decide go for that? And also like how was the process like?
I think the first point is like how do we make a decision? I think there it's really important to like be led by customers on it.
Right.
Like find out what's useful for them or like what qualifications they actually care about. And then number two, like proving that you can win those enterprise deals before you like, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of a chicken and egg.
Yeah.
But I guess at least from our experience, like building the personal relationship with the person that you're gonna like eventually like sell into, building that sponsor, and then they'll often tell you like the things that are important to that company, and the standards and like the security features that are going to be important to make the onboarding successful. So it's kind of like driven by your early customers and like continually adjusted over time as you like onboard new customers. So that's a decision on how to do it. I guess for us, when I think about like how easy or hard it was, it seems it's really fortunate that just basically the infrastructure that we picked, because like I feel like if the more custom you are versus like your DevOps is, the harder it's going to be. Whereas if there's a lot of reasons why you keep your DevOps lead. So we're all serverless for that reason. I guess one is actually like you can keep the team more lean and still move fast. But then the other is you do get really great security features as well.
Yeah. Don't be weird, as some people say. Like the more weird your stack is, the more you have to prove that it works.
Got a very standard stack.
It's very interesting, and that's like the benefit that you get from cloud, compute, and all that, because scaling to the scale that you have, you can do with serverless and cloud and all that. Cool. I want to have like a couple of questions. We'll have another more longer Q&A with Matt, but maybe like burning questions from the group. Yeah.
Hey, Matt. So how do you define this human in the loop in all these events, right? So because agents are going to create events all the time. So how are we going to implement this? Have you already implemented this?
So what we do is we leave one really important principle for us is we never send emails like automatically. It's always we leave draft replies that they can edit and send. And so the human in the loop in this case is the user's always in the loop.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Cool. There from the back.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. I have a question regarding SOC 2 compliance. As you scale, I assume that initially it was easier to manage. As you grow, do you dedicate internal resources? Do you ask for external help, or how do you manage that?
So we manage it internally, but I'd say you're completely right that the challenge as you grow is a lot of the requirements for SOC 2 are process driven. And obviously your process with 4 people is very, very simple, as are like the number of tools that you use, because third-party tools are also a part of it. And for sure, like as you scale, you need to be tracking like who has access to what, and that's often the thing that like you need often like a HR function or security function, depending on like the specific thing, to make sure people onboarded, offboarded properly, like people have access to the tools they need, but they don't have like over access, if that makes sense. And so that's basically the main thing that scales with the size of the company, and that needs to be managed. You likely will need like someone whether it's external or internal that manages that.
Yeah.
Just congratulations on the Series A funding. I wanted to know that because we're like pre-seed and we're like raising funds in the moment. If you would go back when you started first looking for funding, what would you tell your old self?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing was that we were on an accelerator last year, and was fortunate enough we were really like helped raising the Series A from that accelerator. And like the biggest thing they told us was about momentum and that being really important. And like, I think their main advice was if you compress the timeline of fundraising, it does two things. The first thing is it's not as much disruption for your company, because if it's like over 3 months or something like that, a lot of the founders might be distracted, and then the company like starts going off track, and then it makes it harder to raise money, and like that's not a good loop that you want to get into. But like the second thing is honestly like the fundraising just goes smoother when you have the momentum and you have like lots of meetings booked up, because then you get in practice and you get in the groove. And so that's how we try and manage things. It's like a shorter fundraising process, and having like a real like rigorous process to it as well.
And the FOMO, right, from the investors. And also, like, I think it's stressful, right? Like,
It's
raising
intense time for sure.
And how do you, as a your CTO, building and fundraising, like, how was that experience for you? Like, would you rather build? Would you rather raise funds and things like that?
Definitely not rather raise funds. Yeah, that's probably like it's a necessary evil, but like I'm sure like the investors would expect you to say that, because they want people that like are excited to be building the company rather than spending a lot of time fundraising.
And that's with compressing that fundraise journey, wherein you just wanna. I mean, you would also as a builder, right? I imagine you just wanna like, let's just get this over with so I can build this thing, right?
But it's important to tell the story well, because at the end of the day, like that's what's going to get you to be able to grow the business faster, which is what everyone wants. So it's important, like part of it as well.
Yeah. Cool. This was a really nice chat.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, stay a while. We will still have Matt with Reyah and Vignesh. Round of applause for Matt and Fyxer AI. Thanks. So Vignesh is a ML solutions engineer at Snorkel AI, Silicon Valley-based startup that specializes in data development for model evaluation and fine-tuning. So Vignesh specializes in optimizing Gen AI systems with specific focus on RAG and fine-tuning SLMs to adapt to domain-specific cognitive architectures. He has mostly recently completed the AI professional program at Stanford as well. So folks, let's welcome Vignesh.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I've got a demo too, so I'll stay near my laptop. So I want to talk a little bit about state of evals. How do we evaluate some of these systems that we are building today? And what does it take to really build for enterprise solutions? There's a little bit about me. Obviously, you can see there's not a lot to say. I work in Snorkel as an AI solutions engineer. And we primarily work with enterprises, large enterprises, as well as frontier model developers. So we curate data for some of the models that are being trained, will potentially come out in the future. Equally, we also build end-to-end solutions for enterprises that are just looking to get AI into production, right? So that's what I do for a living. I have specific interest in evaluating agentic systems because we're seeing a lot of these being built and come out to production, and I have a very deep interest in reinforcement learning. So how do we use reinforcement learning to improve performance of some of these models on tasks? So why do we need eval? Very simple answers, right? So these are some of the places where things have actually gone wrong, right? It's interesting to think about eval as a topic of interest for GenAI systems. Evaluating something is really not new, right? I mean, we go and stand in bridges, we go and travel by buses, and we're fairly confident that they're not going to go kaput in the middle of the journey, right? The reason why we have confidence in some of these systems, infrastructures, and product is because they've gone through rigorous assessment, right? Somebody has assessed them on a broad range of criteria and have actually determined that they are fit for use, and they've released it to us, right? GenAI systems should also go through that. They don't, right? Lots of AI engineers and software developers build these systems, do not put them through the rigor that's actually required, and quickly get them out into production, and consequently, the end user often gets confused and frustrated, and these are some classic examples of where things have actually gone wrong. Evaluation is a science and an art form, right? So again, there is a lot we can learn about how to evaluate systems from anthropology, from social sciences, because they have perfected it, right? To give you an example, right? I mean, I speak to enterprises, and in a lot of cases, they come and tell me, we don't know how to evaluate the system, right? To give you an example, we've evaluated how well sheep are able to recognize other sheep, right? We've got that right. A study in the University of Cambridge determined that sheep recognize other sheep, 80% of the times. We measured that, right? But we can't measure. Are we saying that we can't measure GenAI systems, right? So there is a lot of evaluation science that we can borrow from some of these other, sciences, and we should be transferring over some of that knowledge into how we evaluate GenAI systems as well. I'll talk about the flywheel. The way we operate with our customers is we start with creating a benchmark data set. A benchmark data set really is the exam set of questions, right? You built this system. There are 50, 100 exam questions that my system needs to pass in order for it to be ready to go out to production, right? That's the step one. Step two is building those specialized evaluators, and those specialized evaluators are defined by multiple criteria, which I'll talk about, multiple evaluators, right? So ultimately, an oracle sitting in the room is going to go and do that exercise of evaluating this system on those examples. And finally, we look at the performance. When we don't look at the performance just from the perspective of how accurate a system is, that just doesn't tell us enough, right? How accurate is the system in specific tasks, in specific categories of questions? And that's really, really important. So that's what we call fine-grained slicing. And we sort of go through this iterative flywheel. And judges do come in many forms, right? So, we've talked about, LLM as a judge was talked about, right? Code-based judges, SME as a judge. Also, what you're going to judge also changes, right? So you could potentially present a single data point and say, judge this, or you could present two different data points and go pairwise and judge this, right? Outcome judgments, reward process judgment, right? So they come in many, many different forms. But ultimately, right, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this talk, it's this, right? This actually comes from a really, really good paper. And if you go home, if you have a specific interest in eval, I highly recommend you to read this. Essentially, we simplify the problem of eval into four distinct things. First is we need to identify a concept. What are we measuring? We need to identify the metric, how much. We need to identify the population, right? We're measuring something on an entire population of data set and on specific instances, which is your sampling strategy, right? So I'm going to measure 500 of my randomly sampled conversation between my agent and the customer, right? So this is a very, very simple but solid background of how to create your criteria, how to define your evaluators. Once you do that, it's fairly simple, which is that you go into each of these different capability areas, and then you define the specific concept, specific criteria, right? So, and in a lot of cases, the business is primarily interested, the enterprises we work with are primarily interested in just the capabilities. How accurate is it, right? But these are systems that users interact with, right? So what impact does the system have on the end user, right? So do they feel confused? Do they feel threatened, right? What risks does it pose, and what opportunities does it give us, right? So these are some very, very broad areas of measurement, right? If you think about your application as not a chatbot, if you think of your application as something that's going to automate a specific workflow which involves people, right, who are actually going to use the system. So we tend to define very broad-based criteria. Again, I will talk about some of these in more detail. And let's go and look at a very simple demo, right? It's not, I don't want to overcomplicate this. So let's say we built this pretty simple chatbot application. Now, this chatbot application is an agentic system which has provided access to a number of different things. So it's got a vector store, right? So simple RAG. It's got access to an external memory. So this is actually using mem0, essentially an external memory which captures information about the user, right? And it's also got access to MCP server with external tools, right? So allowing the user to control where they want the information to be accessed from. We've got a broad range of models. I'm going to go and use a fairly simple model to start with. Let's just start with the 04 Mini, and let's ask a fairly simple question. What was so the data it's got in the vector store are company filings from Gale's submissions. So the revenue you potentially will see, if things don't break, would be Gale's revenue. So in this case, you would expect, great, generate the final response. Did you know Gale's generates £135 million in revenue? So that's Gale's, right? So essentially, it's processed the query. It's done a simple thing, one simple thing, which is it does a document search, and then it kind of generates a response, right? Obviously, we can increase the level of complexity and say, how can I improve? Right, so this is slightly more involved. I don't believe this model is going to be able to do too much justice, but it is trying. It's trying to do a number of different things. It's doing some web search, and hopefully taps into the vector store as well. No, it didn't. Anyway, the point is, right, so the model is kind of given a free way into accessing a number of different tools and components that it can access. We have very little control, right? This is like speed driving in the middle of London. It's just, the model does what the model wants to do. So consequently, we have very little control over what's going in the background, right? And this is why it's really important to evaluate it, right? Because we don't know what it's doing. It is a very, very non-deterministic system. And essentially what it's producing in the process is are very long traces like this, right? So this is our product. Again, I'm not going to give you a detailed introduction of the product, but this is kind of a trace set. And these are very long conversations with nested tool calls and tool outputs and, multiple interactions and information access, right? And it can become really, really unruly suddenly to evaluate these systems, right? This is why evaluation is key, right? So what we tend to do when I work with customers is really define a broad range of criteria, right? So for an agentic system, did the agent do a partial resolution? Did they at least fulfill half of the ask? Did it follow domain instructions? Did it cause confusion to the user? Or was it the user who caused the error in the first place, right? When we work with software engineers and we work with AI developers, oftentimes they kind of just go, okay, well, I'm going to use a string check. I'm going to use LLM as a judge, right? So those are simply just abstractions or methodologies of how to evaluate these systems. It's our responsibility to actually define what to evaluate, right? And consequently, how we're going to use some of this stuff to then improve performance on the end task itself, right? So this is all automated. The last thing I want to say is we do need human in the loop, right? So what we tend to do is we kind of collect a small sample of ground truth data from experts within the business, and we then correlate the performance of these automated evaluators with the LLM as judge. That's it really. So I want to leave you with one last slide and kind of just a final takeaway, right? Let's say this is a generic RAG system, right? Really, really simple, which starts with, we take some questions, do some information gathering and searching, consolidate it, respond, and sort of decide in the end, right? A triage which decides whether to respond to the user or not. The first thing that you will need to do is identify where is the system going to go wrong. What are the failure nodes in my design architecture? And across each of those nodes, you specifically define how I'm going to evaluate it by using metrics. And finally, in the bottom, you've got a broad range of evaluation techniques, right? Don't get too focused on the techniques, right? Focus on your architecture, focus on your failure modes, and focus on how you're going to evaluate your system and what metrics you'll define. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi, sorry, just plugging the thing back in. So just a quick introduction. So I'm Reyah. I'm a solution architect at Swarm, and I'll essentially be inviting the panel members back on, so I will be interviewing them. But just before I do, I just wanted to quickly talk about what Swarm is. So Swarm is, we're a platform startup. So what we have is essentially a platform where you can join as a consultancy, as a single person, as a fractional developer, or a large consultancy. And what we do is you pair you up with sort of large clients. We have partnerships with sort of the big tech vendors, and typically we have sort of ex-FANG engineers, ex-consultancy folks come on as our kind of expert consultants. And so, yeah, so I spend a lot of my time talking to customers as a solution architect, figuring out what their vision is, and sort of translating that into, okay, what kind of AI product here is going to meet the goal, interjecting with evals, because not all the customers potentially know that that's the thing that they need to do. It's effectively the development paradigm of what AI systems are. So yeah, I'm keen to understand what the panel are going to share with us today from this kind of different perspective, right? So if I could welcome them back onto the stage. Yeah, so Matt and Vignesh. Sorry, we're having some technical stuff as they usually do, right? It's a good thing it happens now and not during when the demo gods were smiling down greatly on you today. So that was excellent. Yeah, so I think I will, sorry, I'm just gonna grab my phone because I have my notes here. So I think I will probably start off with just a bit of fun, right? So I think Fyxer, right? You've grown massively, but I want to know what's the weirdest way someone has used your product? That's kind of surprising.
Oh, that's a good question.
I think you need to turn the mic on.
Okay. I think the one for me is like when people started, we've got like a meeting note taker, which is obviously like records the meeting, transcribes it. And we thought, oh, people just attend it and then they'll get the notes at the end, but they actually just like start not attending the meetings and like just leave it. Like if there's a meeting they're not interested in, I'm like, oh, my note taker's joining that, so I'll just like learn what's going on. And like quite a lot of people did that, which I found a bit surprising.
Right, and it's there in your sort of database, right? It's kind of like, did the AI do the right thing? Well, yeah, because it joined the call, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They just like read the transcript later. So.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess a bit of a fun question for you, Vignesh, is like, what's the most, I guess, overrated buzzword you feel is right now? Like, I feel like prompt engineering has become context engineering.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I think the most overrated word right now is MCP. I didn't present that, okay? But, I have to speak the truth, right? Ultimately, these are just tools tools and resources that systems are giving access to, right? And you could just write Python files and provide the same access, right? It's I work on building solutions architecture diagrams, and it's very neat to show MCP and all the connections, right? It's just like a platform and say, oh, you plug in anything you want, right? So I think that's it. But apart from that, No, I do see the value in context engineering. So,
Yeah.
We've been doing that all along. It's just somebody decided, Andre Buckley decided he's going to,
Right.
call it something, and then everybody just goes crazy about it. But yeah, I don't see the value.
Yeah, I definitely see the value, and I agree. Andre is the kind of meme coiner. Yeah. So back on to, I guess, Fyxer question for you. So you've kind of grown massively. You're a SaaS product, right? But you have an enterprise side, right? And I think that's kind of the dream as well. Kind of, can we win this massive enterprise market? So what's kind of like the unique challenge as it compares to like the smaller SMBs?
I guess like the product as it is now, like works really well in single player mode. But then where we want it to get to, which like has a lot of challenges, is like at the moment it builds a knowledge base on you and uses that to learn more about you, do better work for you. And the challenge we're facing at the moment is like, how do you build that for an organization while still like being really mindful about privacy? Because like the moment you're sharing it between people, yes, like if there's two like salespeople at a company, one could learn how the other's like address an objection or something like that.
Right.
But you could also like surface an HR issue in their drafts. And so at the moment, like we're thinking really carefully about like how to roll that out. And that's the biggest challenge, like enterprise, because enterprise really want that functionality, and like there's a concept of like bringing up like the best team, like bringing up every team member to the level of the best team member by like giving access to how they answer questions, for instance.
Yeah. So it's kind of like bringing that, identity access management, integrating with it, and getting really granular with the permissions. Like you don't think about, well, emails by default, they're yours. You don't share them. But when you've it's like a powered system, right, with AI potential to share, well, suddenly you need like a bit of row level permissioning, right? So there's all this stuff. And so Snorkel, I say Snorkel. I'm like pointing out at companies, right? That's not great. Vignesh. So I think I really liked what you mentioned about valuations and it being like a social science. So kind of like thinking about what is correctness, what is quality, what is the nature of the truth that I'm trying to evaluate for. We're not doing typical software engineering where did it give me the expected output, like you said, just a string match. So it strikes me that the people who would be really good at that kind of stuff are actually like product people, because they spend a lot of time understanding the customer, understanding that kind of thing. So I just wonder, like, do you see engineers, yes, they're kind of doing evaluations because they're close to the tech right now, but eventually like a company like Snorkel would eventually open that up to like product developers because they've got really those great insights about evals.
Yeah, I personally think the people who are the best at evaluating something are the end users. They are the best critiques. I have a RAG system that goes into production for 2,000 people in my business, and my users were the most critical ones. Right? So, and I really value feedback on them. But here's what I really think about evals. Right? The app that I showed you today, that was completely like coded. Like it was me half an hour with Claude code. It was like, like I said, speed riding in the middle of London, right? But it works, right? Which essentially means that some of these systems are becoming so good that a lot of what we do today is going to get automated. Right? That's just the sad reality of it. However, what our new jobs in this new world is going to be is writing a good rubric to evaluate these systems and check for alignment. Right? I fundamentally think that's the only skill that we're going to have to develop, because what that will allow us to do is, first of all, decide what the system needs to do and how to evaluate it, right? And second, make sure that it's aligned with our interests, it's aligned with the end user's interest. So I say this to everyone, right? Become really good at writing rubrics, because that's going to be the most important skill.
Yeah, I think off the back of that, so Matt, so how close do you think we are to essentially the AI employees kind of thing? So you're sort of automating the email pipeline and you're boosting the relationships, right? So I think that's quite unique because you're not entirely automating the entire relationship building, but AIs will be involved, right, at some point.
Yeah, the way when I think about predicting how it might happen, I try and see a parallel in history before. Probably the best parallel is when you look at agriculture.
Yeah.
Whenever the combine harvester came out, that was task
Game
by
changer.
task. Instead of automating someone who worked in a farm, who does so many different tasks, I feel the better approach is just going not trying to build an AI employee, but just trying to look task by task what are people doing and what could you feasibly build an AI workflow and replicate that.
Yeah.
Because I think with that in mind, then what people do then shifts, as we've seen in agriculture as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's going to be a big shift for sure. Yeah, so I think I've sort of run out very interesting questions. So I think I might open up to the audience again. So I don't know if anyone has. Yep, one's over there. We'll just bring you a mic.
So to Vignesh, to talk about our job in the future be writing rubrics, how do you go about doing that? Have you got a framework for writing the rubrics? And how do you define those criteria for your models?
Yeah, so I think the way to approach that, again, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this topic, but the way to do that is to start by looking at what are the objectives for the end objectives for any system. So when I design an architecture for any GenAI system, I always start with what do I want the system to achieve in terms of purpose, in terms of metrics. Right? And that's always a good starting point to see whether or not the system achieves it. Right? So start with that. Right? So does the system achieve everything I want to achieve? And that's your level one. But that doesn't really tell you how to fix it. Right? So, if the groundedness is 50%, what do you do? Right? I work with some people in HR. I tell them, okay, you need to measure the groundedness. They go, what is groundedness? Right? So we're going to have to decompose some of these high-level metrics into smaller objectives, right? And those are the objectives that, again, we need to write rubrics for, but they are the ones that are going to give us key insights into where the system is failing. So I'll give you an example. We built a customer care chatbot, and this chatbot was for a retail setting, right? So it's going to go to the end customer, and it was capable of actually facilitating product returns and refunds. Okay, so you're talking to the chatbot, returning the product. Now, the chatbot calculates what refund you will actually get. Okay, it has access to a calculator, but the model, the agent, almost always prefers to just do mental arithmetic, right? Which is fine if it can do a good job, but it doesn't, right? If it hallucinates a number, then it's really, really bad for the end user, the customer, etc. So this is such a nuanced metric that we would measure to make sure that the system exhibits the behaviors that we want it to exhibit so that it achieves the outcomes. So high-level metrics, right? Rubrics, decomposition of rubrics, use that.
Thanks. So we're not just about the outcome, but the process itself.
Indeed.
One here? Yeah.
I just had a question with the I had a question about the LLM as a judge. How do you evaluate which model to judge, which kind of thing? Because different domains of finance, right? Not could be entertainment, could be software engineering. How do you evaluate which one to choose?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm not really sure there's a straightforward direct answer to that question. The way we tend to do it is we tend to have a view of what are some of the best performing models that, and we evaluate it across a number of different benchmarks. So I'll give you an example. I'm working on a benchmark currently to evaluate the performance of different models in playing the game Worland, right? And you would think that, okay, that's a bit silly. No, playing the game of Worland involves heavy reasoning, linguistic reasoning, right? Taking feedback and incorporating the feedback, remembering the feedback you receive. It's such an intricate task, right? And the benchmark, we're about to publish it, and what you notice is that reasoning models perform exceptionally better than some of the non-reasoning models. Right? So what we tend to look at is what is the model good at? Right? What does it do well and what does it not do as well? Right? So from that perspective, today, some of the models that we use for evaluation are O4 Mini. O4 Mini is an exceptional model both from a performance as well as cost basis. Right? 2.5 Pro, Gemini 2.5 Pro is another model we use as well quite often. So these are, so this comes with putting them to test on different tasks and on different domains, and that's usually the best way to find out what works for you.
Sorry, I have one more.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, what if your customer, for example, I have my own internal metrics? How do you get the model to know what those internal metric means, for example? Have you ever faced that issue before?
Yeah, no, I do. So look, I work with a customer who has a metric called German knownness. No prices for guessing this is a German customer, so it's a term they coined there. So essentially what they want to evaluate is they want the model to say, I don't know the answer, and the retrieval does not contain context. That's a really interesting metric. So again, it goes back to building the rubric. Right? Take the metric. What do you really want to measure? If there was an oracle sitting in this room, what would you give this oracle, and what would you want the oracle to tell you? We use that as a framework to build evaluations, and this is one example.
Yeah, I think the I don't know thing was like the issue of the old school AI. You had expert systems, right? That would, if it didn't know for sure what the answer was, it would just say, I don't know. So you built basically a very expensive I don't know machine. And so that's why AI didn't really take off back then. But yeah, LLMs are different, right?
Did you have to create like bespoke rubrics of evaluation?
Yeah, we actually had the same, weirdly we had the same use case as that, for sure. Don't know that, so I like the name of it. I think a lot of our use cases, I'll give an example. We've got obviously a model that detects if you should reply to an email. And so for a lot of the use cases, particularly like email and meeting data, we find that you get in positions where you write the rubric and you start writing rules that kind of conflict with each other. And so that's why we got more into fine tuning, is because like it gets to a point where you're trying to write the instructions that the subtleties kind of get in the way, and then you work out, oh, it's better if you just like give some examples in the prompt, and you're like giving more and more examples, and you think you just need to fine tune this. So for some things, like if it's more objective and subjective, like the rubric really helps, and then the rubric is used for our annotators to actually understand the use case that we're doing for fine tuning. But it depends on the use cases. There's some where it's a bit more like hazy and subjective, where fine tuning like is a bit better.
So how useful are benchmarks then, if there always has to be the bespoke evaluation metric? Yeah.
Both of you. So how are you using the benchmarks? But you mean like a validation set?
No, like the model, the grand benchmark. Like model.
Oh, the benchmarks.
Like, yeah. Like model benchmarks. Like.
So personally, I don't find them useful because we've just done too many tests when like they scored well in like the general benchmark for LLMs. I think that's
the general.
And then like you try it on the Visual use case and just another model does better. We found it more useful for embeddings, but not useful at this point for LLMs.
I think private benchmarks is where it's really at, right? It's you have your own benchmarks that are specific to
100%.
your statistical population that you work with in AI. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it depends on what your use case is, depends on what your industry is. DeepSeek algorithm performs exceptionally well in mathematics. Okay, so what? Right? How is it going to help me? Like, unless I have a PhD in mathematics, and I don't really have reason to worry about it. So yeah, custom benchmarks are really helpful, and those are really the only ones that we
Question about your fine-tuning stuff. You said that you run fine-tuning once for, say, the objective stuff, and then more specifically for the subjective stuff. You said you have a lot of single-player users. Do you fine-tune dynamically, specifically like on a per-user basis? And if so, what's the sort of cost and infrastructure there?
So we don't, but we like in the fine tuning process. What you can do is like instead of having one model per user, you can make something that it learns to adapt based on input really well. Like say if you have user preferences or like it can take it input and know what to do with it very well. So that's like another way of making it adapt to a user, like without having, because I think for fine tuning, I think just with the amount of users we have, like the fine tuning process is meant to be like, if not per industry, like either one model per use case or like one model maybe like adapted to an industry, but definitely like per user you would struggle with breakouts and stuff. So that approach is the one we've taken as a result.
Sorry, what's it called? I just have one more question. Well, like a lot of companies, like AI companies, when they start scaling up, like they immediately, what I hear is that, okay, let's set up our own infrastructure, or whatever, we're going to drive our costs down. Have you like had to encounter that decision before? And what did you guys decide?
Yeah, we did come across customers who decided to buy their own 800 GPUs. Right? This is almost always because they have very sensitive data that they can't really send anywhere. Right? But the performance gap between open source models and frontier models has significantly increased just in the last, sort of, I would say, 3 months. The only model today, from an open source perspective, that I would actually go and touch today is the Moonshot King K2, which came out, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, exactly. It's by far the best open source general purpose reasoning model. Right? But apart from that, anybody who's setting up an infrastructure is only doing it because the regulation doesn't allow them.
And there are like, from my experience, there's like, aside from like having your own influence, there's other things you can do to achieve performance. Like model distillation has been really good for us in terms of just actually like going to an SLM, so just a smaller language model, and using that, or even just like better data cleaning techniques. Like there's some instances where fine tuning you don't need to use a system prompt, so therefore you don't need to like pass those tokens into the model. And like there's lots of optimizations you can look into there around like basically just choosing how many tokens you're putting into the model and how small of a model you can use if you find you don't have the right data.
Any more questions?
Sure. Yeah, so just, if we have no more questions, I'm not sure what exactly is next, or do we call it? Yeah, okay, so thanks so much, Matt and Vignesh, for joining us. I hope everyone learned something. I certainly did. So yeah, thanks again. Give it up for Matt and Vignesh.
Yeah, that's it. That's our event. I hope you learned a lot, enjoyed it. We still have like drinks. We have time to network, which is like very important for you folks. Like approach Vignesh and Matt and Reyah while having drinks and some really good food. Thanks to Thea, the co-organizer, co-founder of Hive. And TEDx founder, her company, okay. And yeah, thank you very much. And please help yourself with some drinks and some interesting conversations. Yeah. Cheers.